David Aaron Schwartz has been HIV positive since June 2010. He was born and raised in Los Angeles, studied sociology at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and then spent a decade living back in Los Angeles before moving to Berlin in 2015. He comes from a background for over 2 decades working across the music industry, mostly significantly as an artist manager. Over the past 2 years, since stepping away from working directly in the music industry, David has been engaged in continuing education and has been involved and dedicated practice of independent research, guest curation, and the development of an archive focused on contemporary queer club culture. So for today, David is giving a talk entitled Archiving HIV/AIDS, Introducing Berlin Spotlights and Research Finding. So I'm really happy, David, that you're here with us, also with Shan, and the room is yours.
Well, first to Samuel, thank you not just for this opportunity and for being involved with this and having me participate in this, but just the continued care and encouragement. I can't even begin to explain to you how wonderful it feels when I get messages from you or I speak with you and I just get this sense of the thing that I don't think I can do, but I know I might be able to do. You let me know in not so many words, you can definitely do that. You got that, you know? And when I hear it from you, it hits me and it means something. And and to Shen, that was a wonderful talk. I feel like my presentation skills pale in comparison because I am still getting accustomed to doing these sorts of presentations. Used to doing workshops in smaller groups. But yeah, so I will, I'm going to start out. What you see here is a journal, and the first entry of that journal was on June 25th, 2010, and that was the day that I found out I was HIV positive. Usually, like, I don't know, in the past, I've given curatorial tours at exhibitions that are involved with HIV, and I actually bring out the notebook that I, was writing that journal in, and kind of read various pages from it. But I think for the sake of this, since there's a short amount of time and other stuff to get to, I think just this initial point, which was all days are not created equal. Earlier this afternoon, I was given a positive result from an HIV rapid results test. I was in a state of quiet shock. And for anyone in the room who's had that experience or similar experiences, but maybe something different, maybe there's something relatable there, but there are 2 points of this, and the reason why I really wanted to bring that quote up was this idea of quiet, this idea of like silent shame going through it in my head in that moment, in the hours and the days and the weeks that followed, until love came around and other people came around and community came around. And I think, I use this, all days are not created equal, in a sense of like, hey, some days are great, some days suck. You got to love the ones that are great and, get through the ones that suck, because that there are, I got a tattoo of it here because it's just something that's really meaningful to me. But I also obviously connect that to the idea of inequality. And I think as we're talking about HIV and AIDS, and as we're talking about the practice of archiving related to queerness and to HIV and AIDS, I think this idea of silence and also this idea of inequality are two enemies of what we're working against in a way. So this was just an overview. Going through the intro now. Basically, I wanted to focus on 3 archives that are here in Berlin. These are by no means all the archives that contain material in Berlin that are related to queerness or HIV or topics like this. But these are the 3 that I've spent the most time in and have experience worthwhile to share. and also touch on some other ones that I've not been to, just to kind of shout them out, as well as some online ones that I think are great. But sort of staying away from the UK and Ireland, because Sean very well just covered that. And then over the course of the last few years, I've been researching so many different things, whilst also building up this archive on queer club culture. And I wanted to kind of boil down or pull out from that research a few things that I find to be interesting and that I think are relevant and worth sharing, especially given the topic for this. So forgive these slides, the first couple, for looking a little as they do. Yeah, that's me. This is usually in a 2-hour thing when I give my whole, but Samuel's already given this. So, but it is kind of nice, even when I'm in, like I talk to music business kids a lot, like master's students and who are artists, but on the music side of things, or who want to work in business. And I really love the fact that I at least get one kid who's just like, looks at me kind of like, that's fucking cool that you just said you're HIV positive, like when there was absolutely no reason to in a classroom, that we're not talking about that at all, or when that becomes a conversation. So yeah, I mean, I used to work in the music industry basically for my entire life since I was 16. I was a concert promoter, I was a booking agent, I was an artist manager. When you talk about being a custodian for a set of artwork or a collection, it's like I was the walking, living, breathing custodian of individual artists going about their journeys. Yeah, that's what I did for a long time, until it didn't feel like it hit me anymore in the way it did previously. And I just was ready for a different chapter. And so that's where we get to here. So, it was, I guess, 4 years ago now, almost December 2021. It was during COVID. I was coming back from Belgium with my husband. I moved to Berlin a little over 10 years ago. Queer club culture saved me, gave me community, gave me life. I mean, I look out at the room of people who are here, and there's at least a handful of people who I've known a decade or maybe a little longer. One of them is my husband, another one just my brother, like literally my best friend right here, and others who I know are here. For years and years and years, every single month we saw each other. That saved me. That gave me a life that I never had in 30 plus years of being in Los Angeles and other cities. And so this queer artwork archive really was a way of, I think on a train ride home from a Christmas trip in Belgium, 8 hours back to Berlin, I just started going through Facebook, every old flyer that we had, from Cocktail de More to Heron Sauna to just a wide variety of events all over Berlin that it really meant something to us, or to me, and I knew meant something to a lot of other people. And that was sort of how this, in a kind of more technical way, I guess, the practice of wanting to archive things started. Basically what I have now with the Queer Culture Archive that I launched earlier this year is actually on an academic publishing platform. It is done in such a way that everything is, it's so fucking tedious to do this, but it's the kind of thing that feels really important to me to do, because it allows the most people possible to most easily access it. And, there's definitely automated ways that we'll implement to help with that and the digitization. But yeah, that's kind of, yeah, so starting the Queer Archive, that basically is an Instagram that still exists, that got a nice following, that was okay, but Instagram is not an archive. Instagram is not owned or controlled by us. It's not free. There's a whole lot of issues, I don't know, you need to go into about that. So yeah, for me, just in terms of, I'm still going through my background, but the last couple of years have been a big shift in terms of the kind of work that I do. So I felt like it was important to at least talk through this. So there was a gallery in London that I worked with, where basically they wanted to do some queer club culture prints, and I connected them with some artists and helped them do the curation to put that together so that they could do really beautiful prints of those in London, put them up for an exhibition, and then also make them available for sale via the gallery, which for me was this win-win. Hey, I get to all these artists who are friends of mine who are making the kind of money that you make when you make flyers in Berlin, and dealing with the people that you have to deal with to do that, and getting a source of monthly revenue coming in that they don't have to do anything to touch. They're licensing that artwork over. It feels great. And then I had been going to the Instinct shows at We Are Village a couple times a year since, 6, 7, 8 years now. And then in the last couple of years, I'd gotten closer with Eric and Kai. And so early part of last year, I kind of started stepping in to provide some guidance or ideas or suggestions and that they were taking. So then, it felt good as a team. And that was really the first time that I had experience properly being involved with, helping to curate an exhibition. And that was also where I had the opportunity to meet Samuel on the second one. The red reminds me of Solitude, which was in conjunction with World AIDS Day and with visual aids. And yeah, that was an amazing, it was a unique experience. It was definitely got to learn a lot from that. For you, who's done many exhibitions, it's one of many. For me, that was like a early one, I want to get to the other stuff because I'm out of time here. So getting into the archives, especially with the local spotlight on Berlin. Okay, so Schwartz Museum, I'll start with. I've spent a lot of time there. There's at least one person in the crowd who's seen me there a couple of times. So for, maybe just like quick show of hands, because I'm just curious as I go through this, what information makes sense. How many of the people in this room have been to an archive, period, okay? And is that part of your regular thing? Keep your hands up. Is that part of what you do? Okay. So to some of you then, some of this stuff might feel like you already know this because you're spending time there, so I'll go through that a little quicker. But yeah, so Schwartz has their archive, which is very deep and contains many, many items, a small portion of which have been processed completely. It's totally free to go into the library. You can go onto their library page, and I brought stuff in of just, the first time I went in and had everything printed out of what I wanted from the library, because I knew that anything from the archives that I wanted to get, I was going to have to wait at least a day or 2 days to get. And this has just been like an endless. I've become such a nerd. I didn't realize, like after turning 40, I would get so many library cards and spend so many days and nights in places like this and loving it and enjoying the material that I'm digging into. So there's first thing on Schwartz. For those of you who don't know, when you go into the library, if you want to make a request for archival material, they give you these catalogs, or some people call them finding aids, that'll be under different subcategories. You have, like, for this, and a lot of the stuff that I tend to be looking up, because this is sort of an intersection of my research interests, aids and then subculture. So, you get the notebook for aids, and then it'll give you a whole lot of different things there that are names of organizations, that are names of individuals, names of events, and you can put those, then what is there to put a request in for. Same thing with subculture. When you go through subculture, basically every bar or nightclub that has existed in the city of Berlin that is queer related in some way is in there, and parties, and Laboratory and Berghain and all of this, right? So then you take these little slips, fill it out, tell them what you want, and leave them there, and you set aside what the dates are that you want to come back and pick them up. Pretty straightforward. And then voila, materials are there. So this was kind of funny, actually, because this was the most recent time that I went, and So there's this question, to talk for a moment about the HIV/AIDS in terms of the research I've been doing. I've been really, because queer culture has been such a community to me, and because I've been immersed in it for a while, and it has become just such a place of its home. I really wanted to know, in the same way that we use today communication platforms that are available, in the ways that we reach each other and how we choose to communicate about things at those parties. In times before cell phones, in times before message boards, on the internet, at what point were they talking about HIV or play sex or safer sex or safe sex or any of these kinds of things? And this was really, if you want to say like a research question, it was sort of, I was looking for it as if there was like this one answer, right? Of at what point did, on the flyers and at the parties, they start saying, wear condoms or be aware of HIV? Like, when did that news, reach each of the different places? And of course, there's no one answer to that, because just like every party and every club, they do things the way they choose to do things, right? And there's a level of personal responsibility and accountability. But so I started looking in the kind of obvious places that would be, snacks, laboratory. I was surprised when I pulled up Boiler and there was like very little in there, but then I also realized Boiler hadn't been around that long. I thought for some reason it was around a lot longer, but not. So, but what was also funny about this was then one of the folders that I pulled up, it was actually, my name's on there because it was all the stuff that I had donated when I had visited one time, and it was all this stuff. It was like menus from snacks and all this stuff, but it's kind of funny. Full circle moment. Okay, so that Trueless Museum. So Spinboden, I spent 2 days in. So lovely, so cozy. If you've not been there before, go there. It's wonderful. It's in Prenzlauer Berg, really easy to get to off the U-Bahn. You're in the back house on the second or third floor. You feel like you're in a really nice library of someone's manor. It's just cozy. You definitely, it's free to enter. They do ask, for like a donation-based kind of membership, but if you don't have that, they're not going to, not let you in there. And they are only open on Wednesdays and Fridays, and a lot of the archives tend to be these, they're not open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, because they're working with volunteers, and this isn't a very profitable, endeavor. This isn't a profit endeavor. That's not why people are doing this. So, so reaching them in advance is always, good. I mean, when I reached out to them and told them what kind of research I was interested in doing, it was great, because when I got there, they only get so many emails, and I walk in and they're like, oh, you're David, hey. And then we start talking, and they pulled out a bunch of stuff already that I would have never, especially with my Deutsch skills not being as strong as they should be, able to access a lot of the things that I was able to access because because I reached out to them and they were so sweet. That was easy, and they made it really easy. So you can also go online and basically all three of these, you can go online and see what's in their library catalog. And at every place you go to, you can always just already have that list. So when you go in, they'll show you where those things are. They also have, so I don't know if anyone's ever, the Queer Zine Library in Berlin was kind of like a mobile library for a little bit. They would pop up and do events where they would bring their truck and kind of set up at restaurants or cafes for the afternoon. But they now house the entire collection of the Queer Zine Library. So if you're into zines, this is definitely a place to go and check out. They've got an amazing collection there. It's also part of Spinboden now. And then the last one, and this one I've now been spending quite a lot of time in, because there's even the Archive of Youth Culture, for a while it turned me away because everything was in German, all their social media is in German. I just assumed that like, no way an American person who speaks shit German is gonna like be able to navigate this. And also the idea of youth culture to me as a phrase was always like, okay, so what what falls under that umbrella, and they don't necessarily have specifically, they don't have sections that are tagged for queer materials or for materials related to HIV and AIDS or for materials related to trans people or to lesbians or to, they don't have that because they're based more in, they've got so many, I mean, like that magazine Zitty that was around in Berlin for a really long time that used to do these really thick issues that had several cover stories on HIV. I mean, they've got 30 years every issue going back in very good condition. They've got all these fans. They've got so many punk zines. They've got so many skate zines. And within those, it's really interesting because you end up getting, like, for example, there's a punk scene that was called Kill the Robot. And in one issue, they just dedicated the entire issue to talking about HIV and to talking about ACT UP and interviewing every single person that they could. It was obviously done in a very DIY kind of way, but it's also the kind of thing that you would never have come across if you went into a place to get queer stuff, because this zine, that name, isn't associated really with anything queer because they did this one issue where they really covered the hell out of it, and really dove in. And so they have so many flyers. Like, their whole thing really is they've got this collection of techno ephemera, because from the name is fleeting me right now. It's in my notes. But one of the guys who was a co-founder or co-CEO of the original Love Parade, his entire estate was donated to them. So everything from UFO, everything from Evork and Planet, and like all of these, early 90s, mid 90s techno establishments, they have so much stuff. So much stuff. And mixed within there, of course, there's a whole lot of queer stuff. And there's, there were a bunch of flyers that I found that were related to events that were doing fundraising for Berliner AIDS Hilfe or Deutsche AIDS Hilfe, or, there were memorial events that they were having parties for. And it was just, the kind of stuff I'd love to be able to show you right at this moment. But it's great. The reason why I'm so excited about this place at the moment is because it feels like it's just so untapped, in the sense of, like, no one has really gone through all that stuff and discovered what's in there, and they're really open to, I mean, the second day that I was there, Daniel just said, hey, come here. I don't know, there's 3 whole boxes of stuff. I have no idea what's in there. Maybe there's something of interest to you. And we just sat there together for 2 hours. I'd never met this person really, pulling stuff and going through it and finding a bunch of great stuff. So I would highly recommend spending time at this place. So then other archives in Berlin. These are a few. I've not been to any of these 4, so I can't personally tell you a whole lot about them. By the way, there were these little note cards I had intended with, like, pens for everyone on the chair, just to have, like, note if you want to take notes and something. But if you go to that QR code, I'm going to publish all this, so you can find that there. And then, okay, so then in terms of digital archives, so I share a lot of interest with the speaker who spoke before me in visual communication and visual graphics, and the way in which HIV was communicated about. And there's questions that I have for her already when we get to that point after this. Just in terms of how all that's divided, I just think it's fascinating. It's divided by who the intended audience is for it and what the subject of it is. And those are the two parameters you can basically use to look through. But with, like, I have no, as an American, the hygiene museum sounds like something I would, like, hygiene obviously has different connotations and whatever. But the Deutsche Hygiene Museum in Dresden has so much stuff. If you just go into their basic search bar and put HIV or AIDS or Deutsche AIDS Health or anything, you get so much back with so much information. New York Public Library, obviously, for things related to the U.S., for things related to ACT UP, but even, well beyond that. But they definitely, for Grand Fury alone, they have the entire collection of stuff that's available in New York. One national gallery is at USC. My husband likes to joke with me that everywhere in LA says that they're world famous or that they're the best in the world or whatever. So I can't actually confirm this, but they say it. That they're the oldest active lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer questioning organization in the U.S. and the largest repository of LGBTQ materials in the world. I mean, that very well may be true. It's also a very American statement to make. Yeah. UCLA did this amazing project when we're talking about posters related to AIDS, where they basically were in communication with hundreds and hundreds of different arts organizations all across the world and brought in, so they actually have the physical posters in LA, but they also have digital high-res of all of them on their site. And then the Welcome Collection in the UK, which covers a lot of areas of culture, but definitely has a lot of HIV-related things. So now I just kind of wanted to go through like things that I came across through doing the research that I did that just sort of jumped out to me for one reason or another. I mean, the people at Spin Bowden were just really excited that someone wanted to look at the T-shirts that they had there, which made me really excited. But there were a few ACT UP T-shirts, which it's cool that they have, but are not I've seen before. And this one and also the fact that they don't really know a whole lot about it, and they've done the research, but they kind of can't track it down. But just this idea of many postures with one better than one with many, using this idea of Kama Sutra, as a way to offset having sex with a bunch of different partners as a safer sex kind of method. This organization, Positive Action, they were actually started by Welcome, which is that archive that I'd mentioned earlier. So on this shirt, you can read it, or below it says, an international initiative developed by the Welcome Foundation, Ltd, for the support of people affected by HIV and AIDS. So Positive Action, I guess, was an initiative they had. They sold merch for, went to a good cause. This is something I have at Spin Bowden. I actually have a few of these shirts. And also at Spin Bowden, I mean, when I went in there and I told them, in knowing what they have, it seemed like Deutsche AIDS Health kept coming up as a source I should be looking at for obvious reasons. And this was one of the first things I saw, and that I would need to look up exactly what the dimensions of it were, but I mean, just one of those squares was easily 10 or 15 centimeters by 10 or 15 centimeters. So it was like this pamphlet that folded out into this big poster. And I think just on an artistic aesthetic level, I really love this and was drawn to this. And it was also the kind of thing that then made me realize, okay, well, who were the people involved in this? And so I came across this person whose name is down at the bottom, Edmundo Galindo. And then when I started looking at stuff that he was involved with, I started going into all kinds of other places, right? So there was a place in Berlin that existed, what years was it? It was 89 to 2003, I think. Something, I can't see the notes when I do it on here. So Edmundo had done the poster announcing, I think this was the new location of that cafe. And this was a project that was by the Berliner AIDS Health Organization. And it was basically a cafe for HIV positive people to get together. It was HIV positive people who worked there, who came in there. And I think, from what I've read, they dealt with a lot of kind of harassment from the neighborhoods that they were in, and had moved once or twice. And just interesting to look back and think about when we talk about archives and what can we get from them. Like, during COVID, did we have a thing that was like, hey, everyone who has COVID, come to this place for, obviously these are different, they require different levels of care in different circumstances, but I don't know, it was just the idea of community and meeting ground and meeting place. I thought that was special. this was something from Deutsche AIDS Health. I just thought the artwork on this was so amazing. Like just the fact that in 1996 they thought that, okay, well, people who we want to encourage to have safer sex, and especially because they talk about, safer sex and drug use in here as well. These things look like little acid trips, like little mushroom trips, like these. I just think it's great. Like this just really jumped out to me on a visual level. This was also at Spin Bowden. So yeah, then this moves over to kind of the variety couple boxes at the Archive de Jugendkultur. This was from a Theater Against AIDS event that was held in 1994. And then we're back at Schwartz. So yeah, I mean, obviously, the fact that Schwartz is now officially closed is just fucking awful. Like the fact that that is not in a more public way out there of people feeling that kind of way. I don't know exactly their internal politics like a lot of other people do, or their internal finances, but I mean, I'll remember when you fill out something at one of these archives, you don't know necessarily ahead of time how many folders or how many boxes you're going to get. And when I came to like the sitting area where I had some of my other stuff, and I saw that the Schwartz stuff had came, and there were like 4 boxes stacked up. And it was like, oh, that's all Schwartz. Like, okay, like these people kept great notes on everything, apparently, But it wasn't just that. I mean, they'd been around for so long, and they really, so much of the documentation is there, and it really was, I mean, I had to stop myself from looking through everything because I was looking for this kind of specific thing, and I know that it's being kept in a safe place there and that I can return to it in the future. But, so for example, this is from 1989, right? And I had mentioned earlier that there was this question about like, when did venues start talking about HIV or talking about safer sex, right? So if you look at November 1989, they were holding these events called Talk Schwartz, right? So this one was on the 17th of November, and then for December it was on the 15th. Where they were bringing in HIV doctors. They were talking about safer sex. They were doing it in partnership with AIDS Health. There were other flyers that I came across as well, where they were even having like parties that we would call today to be sex positive. And they were having these kinds of open events and panels and discussions like right before those events, which is something that, I don't know if it's generationally or culturally or what, the idea of going to a sex party at a venue, and before that happens, half the people sit down in a room and have coffee and just kind of address issues as a group, as a community, before we start drinking or doing other things or whatever, getting into it. I just think that's fascinating. I just think that's like an interesting concept that feels really foreign in contemporary club culture. And also, I mean, Schwartz is just amazing. When you give people who are lovely, creative, queer, freak, weirdo, wonderful, are beautiful people, like the ability to make newsletters and to make things, like they're gonna go for it, and they're gonna have fun doing it, right? And they're gonna take pride in it. And so this was a newsletter, translates to a monthly magazine for angry gays. Right, and like the picture up at the top is what they choose to use for their cover. But so going back to kind of like the research question that I was asking, it's like, okay, well here, this is kind of a blow up of what you see up there, this idea of safer sex with this kind of macho, Tom of Finlandish looking dude. And this is 1989. And, this is, again, on one of those nights where they're having a talk. And if you also look down at the films that they're showing, I will butcher this in Deutsch, but it's a movie of, what's her name? The Virus is Not Immoral, right? Rosa Fraunheim. Yeah. And I mean, also when we're talking about archives and what lessons we can take from that today, I mean, I think there's obvious ecological issues when it comes to paper, right? And when it comes to printing. and when it comes to privacy, concerns. But I mean, I would love to get a newsletter in the mail. I mean, I do now because I want to, and so I subscribe to them from certain places, But who doesn't love getting mail that's something they actually are looking for and want and have been waiting for, And what better way to like really communicate like who you are, what you're about, and giving someone something to sit with, And also, when we're talking about care and we're talking about mutual aid, like how many of us know? I mean, for your close friends, you know their addresses, but for most people, we can't even remember their phone number. It's saved in our phone, let alone maybe where their address is, right? Yeah, I don't know, something to think about. This was something I came across at Schwartz. This was HIV EV, which is an organization I did a bit of research about that ended up, I believe, folding into Berliner AIDS Health or Deutsche AIDS Health. Yeah, this was an event that Schwartz hosted there for them. Again, with Schwartz, a little later on, 91, having what they were calling these safer sex parties was how they referred to them, Another event that Schwartz was holding for 1 year for this Berliner Healing Circle with a few different organizations. I don't know, also just looking back, it makes me sad that Schwartz doesn't exist anymore when I really actually think about it, even though I didn't spend time going there recently, in the last 6 months or a year, because I didn't. Yeah, it's just, they've been around for a long time. They've done a lot. So this gets more into like where my head was at when I was thinking, okay, I want to know between this flyer and then this flyer. That's when they, the internal designers decided to start saying, we're going to put, something about condoms or play safe. And, at first I kind of thought I did, because these are all ordered chronologically. So like this is December 94. This is April of 95, and then that's later in July for CSD. And you notice on this one on the far right, these other two up at the top have their little play safe in a circle thing. And I know it's a small thing, right? But on every other thing, they always say pervy party, right? They always say men only, because at this time, that's how that party was operating. But the play safe thing, they chose to leave out for CSD for whatever reason that time. But then you move forward, and you go back to, this is 97, pervy party, men only, play safe. The snacks one for Easter you can't really see so well, but it does say play safe there. This is just, these two are just so unique flyers on like a visual design level. I think are really just interesting. Neither, the fast food with the M is the McDonald's, the snacks. Just like, come on. But yeah, other people's Deutsch is better than mine, but I don't believe it says play safe anywhere on here. In fact, it says like wear your protective outfits, which could, yeah. And then you keep going ahead. Pervy party, men only, play safe, play safe, play safe. And now we're getting into 99, 2000, 2001. It's interesting because this one doesn't actually say play safe. Oh, no, it does, right there up at the top, play safe. Same thing on the far right. Snacks club, pervy party, men only, play safe. So then you look at, this is fast forward to 2008, and they're still saying the same thing, play safe, right? And I have certainly safe sex. It's like they have to be taking the piss, right? Like they're not actually like certainly safe sex. Like, is there does that translate from German to English in such a way that means something other than it sounding like certainly everyone's having safe sex, other than like they're being cheeky about it in a way that like people are doing whatever they want? Like, then why even say that on the flyer? Why not shut up? Why not, if you're going to address it in that way? I don't know. I don't have the opportunity to interview that person. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'll just get into these sort of takeaways. I mean, the research I've done, this is just one set of entry paths into gaining deeper perspectives around attitudes and actions taken in response to HIV and AIDS historically. So this is just my one individual attempt at looking through the lenses that I do. And one thing I can say for absolute fucking sure, definitively from all this, is there is so much more energy and resources that are needed in the area of digitizing materials and to make them more fully accessible. Like, I love Schwartz Museum. I fucking love Schwartz Museum, right? But like, I got time on my hands, and my German ain't perfect, but I would love to just give you my time and go through and help do that, and that hasn't been able to be possible, it seems. You know, like, one of the reasons I'm spending a lot of time at the Youth Culture Museum is like, when I tell him, yeah, my German's not great, and it should be, I get it, like, I understand that. However, so much of the stuff that they have there, just like at Schwulis, is English language stuff, you know, and I only need to know certain things to do it. It's just not only about getting it digitized and scanned, but then getting it scanned and tagging it and making it actually available to be searched in public. And it, yeah. So this is me saying, if you have free time, go to your local archive and see if you can donate some of that time, because you're actually doing something good for a place that's meaningful. And then digging into research with archival materials, for me, it always leads to so many other different threads and mysteries to attempt to uncover. And I mean, that's what I love about it, in a way. But I also realize I need to focus in on specific research for specific things and not just, but there we are. Yeah, and I guess something to leave with was, you know, what can we learn from the past through collections from archives like this?
Can we leave this as a
Yeah.
Q&A? Because we are getting
Oh, yeah.
we are running out of time.
Yeah. Go, go.
Can you hear me? I don't know.
Samuel's telling me to wrap it up.